He limped past the auto shop in silence, his prosthetic leg clicking softly beneath the Texas sun. The mechanics saw a limp, not the war that caused it. They mocked him, laughed, called him Robo-Vet, and joked about disability checks. What they didn't know? That man had once dragged 2 soldiers from a burning helicopter, one of them a Navy SEAL commander. 10 minutes later, black SUVs rolled in. 7 SEALs stepped out. No words, no warnings, just boots, silence, and justice. What happened next stunned the city and the internet, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about honor, long overdue. The Dallas heat hung heavy, thick as engine smoke, baking the sidewalk in waves of shimmer and dust. Traffic crawled past in sluggish grumbles, horns honking at nothing in particular. Just off Lemon Avenue, a row of auto bays stood open, music blaring, sparks jumping from a welder's arc. The kind of place where sweat was expected and laughter was currency. It was loud, rough, unapologetic. And on that particular Tuesday afternoon, it became something uglier. Sergeant Lucas Hayes moved along the sidewalk with a quiet, measured pace. His left leg moved smooth and natural, his right mechanical. The matte gray prosthetic made a soft, rhythmic squeak with every step. He wore cargo pants and a plain black tee, sun-faded and clinging to his frame. A weathered ball cap shaded his face, brim tugged low. He didn't limp out of weakness. He limped because steel and carbon fiber don't always sync perfectly with skin and memory. The first shout came from a guy under a lifted Chevy, young, maybe mid-20s, oil on his arms, smirk already loaded. "Hey, Robo-Vet, lose your tank?" It drew laughter from a few others scattered along the bay. One of them, bald, barrel-chested, stood and tossed a socket wrench to the ground like a mic drop. Bet he's on his way to pick up his government check. Should have added a turbo to that leg. Lucas said nothing. He didn't glance their way. His hand tightened slightly around the brim of his cap, a twitch of the jaw. Nothing more. They didn't know he'd once pulled 2 men from a flaming helicopter wreck in Helmand Province. They didn't know the steel in his right leg was matched only by the steel in his spine. They didn't know the cost of crawling through shattered rotors and burning fuel to drag a medic and a pilot to safety, or the sound of his femur shattering when the second explosion hit. They only saw a limp. And, like many who've never worn a uniform, they mistook sacrifice for weakness. Lucas kept walking. Each step forward felt like an act of quiet defiance. Not for their sake, but his. He had walked through hell once. A few voices from the cheap seats wouldn't make him stop now. Lucas Hayes lived on the 2nd floor of a tired apartment building tucked behind a shuttered grocery store on the edge of East Dallas. The paint peeled in long strips from the siding. The stairs groaned under his weight, and the porch light flickered like it, too, had seen better days. Inside, the space was small but orderly. 2 rooms, a scarred coffee table, and a recliner that leaned slightly to the left. The blinds were always halfway drawn. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was earned. Chief, a graying German shepherd with cloudy eyes and a gentle limp of his own, lay curled by the door. He never strayed far from Lucas's side. Service dog by designation, companion by nature. Some days they walked 3 blocks to the park. Some days they didn't leave the apartment at all. Either way, Chief understood. No commands necessary. The mornings started the same. A black mug of burnt coffee, 2 pain pills. One hand sliding over the dog tags hanging from the bedroom doorknob like a ritual. Lucas didn't wear them anymore, but he still needed to touch them, to remind himself he hadn't imagined that life, that there had been another version of him, whole, sharp, necessary. His wife, Janie, had been the bright part of that chapter. Letters sent on deployment. Video calls dropped mid-laughter. A laugh like wind chimes, he used to say. She never saw him come home in pieces. An accident took her during his third tour. Wrong place, wrong time. Nothing heroic. Lucas got the news from a corporal holding a satellite phone with shaking hands. She was gone before he could even whisper goodbye. When he came back stateside, there was no banner. No ceremony. Just paperwork and silence. Employers looked past his qualifications to the line at the bottom, disabled veteran, and decided he was too much of a risk, too slow, too complicated. The war had given him medals, but it had taken his future. Still, he shaved every morning, still folded his clothes, still called "yes, sir" to the older man in 2B who left notes under his door. The war hadn't broken him, but it had made the world quieter. And Lucas had learned to live in that quiet step by step, without expecting anyone else to hear. The sun beat harder now, midday heat bouncing off pavement and metal, baking everything in a haze of sweat and attitude. The auto garage was alive with the sound of pneumatic tools, clanking steel, and blaring rock from a rusted radio zip-tied to a ceiling beam. The laughter hadn't stopped. If anything, it grew meaner with every step Lucas took away from them. Probably faked the whole thing to get that leg check. One of the mechanics muttered loud enough to be heard, wiping his hands on a rag that was already more grease than cloth. Another man, lanky and sharp-eyed, cackled and added, "Yeah, he's limping all the way to the bank." Troy Geller, the shop's manager, stepped out of the bay like a man craving attention. Early 40s, all swagger and sunburn, with mirrored sunglasses and a mouth that had never learned when to shut. He had a clipboard in one hand and a half-finished energy drink in the other. He scanned Lucas from head to toe and smirked. "I served, too," he called out, just as Lucas was reaching the edge of the lot. "Served burgers at a barbecue for Memorial Day. Does that count?" The crew burst into laughter again, louder this time, feeding off each other like a pack. Someone actually clapped. Someone else mimicked a limp behind a car hood. No one stopped it. No one said a word in protest. The parking lot had become a performance stage, and Lucas had been cast in a role he never auditioned for, the punchline. Across the street, a teenager with earbuds in and a phone out had paused on her scooter. She tilted her head, watching the scene unfold. With a quick swipe, she started recording. Her laughter, faint but audible, punctuated the clip. "Yo, this is wild," she said to the girl beside her, who covered her mouth in mock shock. "Wait till TikTok sees RoboCop over here." Lucas didn't turn around. He didn't speak. His jaw was set like stone, his eyes locked on the horizon. He walked on, slow and steady, the soft hiss of his prosthetic the only reply. Behind him, the laughter hung in the air like smoke, thick, toxic, and destined to blow back. They didn't know the fire they'd just lit. Not yet. The sun had shifted slightly in the sky, casting sharper shadows across the lot, but the air hadn't cooled. If anything, it had grown heavier, as if the world was holding its breath. Across the street, a trio of black SUVs coasted around the corner like predators moving in formation. They didn't blast music, they didn't honk, they just came, silent, deliberate, unmarked. The polished black metal gleamed beneath the harsh sunlight, their surfaces so clean they looked like obsidian pulled from the earth. They rolled to a stop along the curb just outside the auto garage. The engines stayed running, a soft, low growl beneath the midday noise. The kind of sound that didn't demand attention but refused to be ignored. At first, no one noticed. Then someone pointed. "Yo, who the hell is that?" The workers who had been laughing now squinted through the haze. The girl on the scooter lowered her phone. Something about the vehicles felt wrong. Or maybe too right, too intentional. Still, nobody moved. Not until the first doors opened. All 6 at once. Like a synchronized drill, not rushed, not theatrical. Just precise, purposeful. Out stepped 7 men. They wore no uniforms, but they didn't need them. Black tactical pants, fitted black shirts, heavy boots laced high and tight. Some wore sunglasses, others didn't. Not one of them smiled, not one of them spoke. They didn't have to. Boots hit pavement with the weight of authority. Not the kind born of ego, but the kind forged in places where silence meant survival and every move mattered. They moved as one, like they'd done this 100 times before. Maybe more. Formation wasn't for show. It was habit, muscle memory, brotherhood in motion. The laughter died like a candle blown out. A wrench slipped from someone's hand and clattered against the concrete. No one picked it up. Conversations that had been bouncing around the lot seconds earlier vanished, swallowed by a silence that fell like a dropped curtain. Even the music from the old radio had been turned down, or maybe someone had killed it entirely. The SEALs didn't look left or right. Their eyes scanned the shop, the workers, the sidewalk beyond. Measuring, calculating. Not angry, just aware. Dangerous in the way still water hides its depth. And in that moment, every man who had laughed now felt very, very small. The last man to step out of the lead SUV didn't do it with flair. He didn't scan the crowd or square up like someone ready to fight. He just moved. Slow, sure, grounded. Commander Jesse Rourke stood tall, broad through the shoulders, jawline carved from granite. His presence wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The way he walked said everything. Controlled, steady, like a man used to storms. He didn't glance at the mechanics, the foreman, or the gawking teenager still gripping her phone with trembling hands. He didn't have to. His eyes were fixed on a single figure, now almost half a block away, moving toward the crosswalk with that same familiar limp. Mechanical, deliberate, unbroken. Lucas Hayes. Rourke knew that walk. He had seen it once before, through smoke and chaos and the roar of a helicopter engulfed in flame. Afghanistan. 8 years ago. The firefight had torn their convoy apart, scattered them like dry leaves under a hurricane. A hot LZ, broken comms, enemy fire closing in, and a medevac bird forced down in the worst stretch of desert they'd seen that month. Jesse remembered being pinned beneath a twisted frame of metal, ribs cracked, shoulder dislocated, breath coming in short, panicked bursts. And then, Lucas. No backup, no promise of survival. Just one man sprinting into fire like he had no intention of leaving anyone behind. Jesse never forgot how it felt when those hands grabbed him under the arms, dragged him out from under the wreckage like a sack of bones. Never forgot the way Lucas had gritted his teeth and kept moving, even after shrapnel shredded his calf and tore into his leg. He remembered the scream. The blood, the moment Lucas collapsed, still shielding Jesse with his body. Now here they were, on a street in Dallas. One limping away unnoticed by the world, the other stepping out of a black SUV like a shadow from the past. Jesse Rourke had stood on stages, had received medals, shaken hands with senators, but none of that would have happened if not for the man now disappearing around the corner, quiet, unseen, disrespected. Commander Rourke didn't come to speak. He came to repay a debt. Commander Jesse Rourke didn't break stride. His boots hit the concrete with a rhythm that silenced the air even further, like the very sound of authority approaching. He didn't hesitate, didn't scan the lot for clues or witnesses. He knew exactly where to go. Straight to the man still holding a clipboard he no longer remembered how to use. Troy Geller stood at the edge of the bay, trying to piece together a smirk that wouldn't stay put. His sunglasses were off now, tucked awkwardly into his collar, as if shielding his eyes might somehow shield his guilt. His workers stood behind him, half a step back, watching but saying nothing. Rourke stopped a foot from him. No expression, no preamble. "Who just mocked Sergeant Hayes?" The words weren't loud, but they landed like a hammer. Flat, cold, certain. Troy blinked, startled by the precision of the question and the weight behind the title. "Look, man, it was just a joke," he muttered, trying to shrug it off like spilled oil on a shop floor. Nobody meant anything by it. From behind Rourke, one of the SEALs stepped forward. Younger, buzz-cut, eyes sharp and unreadable. He held up his phone. "We recorded every second, from across the street. The girl filming? We have her footage, too." Another SEAL, taller and darker, crossed his arms over a broad chest. "That man saved this man's life," he said, jerking his chin toward Rourke. "Carried him out of a burning helicopter. Lost his leg doing it." The air shifted, like pressure dropping before a storm. No more smirks, no more snide laughter. Just silence. The heavy, guilty kind that thickens the longer it lasts. A couple of mechanics looked down at their boots. One backed away without realizing it. The girl with the phone had stopped recording. Her hands hung at her sides now, her face pale, her screen dim. Troy opened his mouth again, but the words never made it out. Rourke stepped in closer, not threatening, just absolute. "You humiliated a man who should have had a street named after him," he said. "You laughed at someone who paid a price you couldn't imagine just so people like you had the freedom to laugh in the first place." Nobody moved, nobody dared. Justice didn't always come loud. Sometimes it came in boots, in facts, and in a silence that made cowards sweat. Lucas heard the footsteps before he saw them. Steady, sure, not rushed, but with purpose. They didn't sound like the casual clatter of pedestrians or the nervous scuff of someone with something to say, but not the courage to say it. These were boots he knew, the kind that walked into danger, not around it. He was nearly at the corner when the sound made him pause, just enough to glance back over his shoulder. And there he was. Commander Jesse Rourke. Older now, but unmistakable. Broad shoulders, squared jaw, and eyes that had seen the same fire Lucas had walked through. He wasn't alone. Behind him, 6 Navy SEALs formed a line across the sidewalk, a wall of silent strength. They weren't here for theatrics. They weren't here for revenge. They were here for something more powerful. Lucas's brow furrowed. His lips parted slightly, uncertain. And then it happened. Rourke stopped exactly 10 paces away and brought his right hand sharply to his brow. A salute. Not casual, not soft, sharp, textbook, earned. The 6 behind him followed in perfect unison. No command given, no cue needed, just a moment forged in reverence. The street went still. Across the lot, the shop workers stood frozen, hands at their sides, suddenly too aware of their own noise. The girl who had once filmed Lucas lowered her phone. Shame and awe tangled in her silence. For once, nothing moved. No cars, no words. Only the slow exhale of a city witnessing something rare. Honor, unspoken but unmistakable. Lucas didn't move at first. His heart thundered in his chest, not from fear, but from something else. Recognition. For so long, he had walked unseen, unthanked, misjudged. And now here he stood, facing the men who knew exactly what his silence had cost him. His right hand lifted, stiff at first, muscle memory dragging it into place. His fingers touched his brow, the first salute he'd given in years. It wasn't ceremonial, it wasn't patriotic. It was personal. He held it for a long beat, eyes locked with Rourke's. He didn't cry. Men like Lucas didn't break that way. But something shifted inside, something old, wounded, and buried. And in that quiet, unshaken salute, it began to heal. By nightfall, the video had already hit 1 million views. It started as a shaky clip. A teenager's phone, tilted sideways, the lens catching 7 men in black saluting a lone veteran at the corner of a sun-baked Dallas street. No flashy music. No narration. Just silence, boots, and one moment that said everything. A quiet act of reverence so pure, so absolute, it needed no explanation. The internet did the rest. "This is how you honor sacrifice," read the caption on the first viral post. Another followed, not pity, not politics, just respect. Within hours, every major platform had picked it up. Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. The comment sections filled with something rare, unity. Veterans from all eras chimed in. Families of service members, civilians who'd never served but suddenly understood something deeper. The news cycle didn't wait. Local anchors aired the clip in stunned tones. National outlets picked it up before midnight. By morning, Lucas Hayes, once just a man limping past a garage, overlooked and mocked, had become a name people said with reverence, not because of a medal, not because of a speech, but because a man who never asked for recognition was finally seen. The garage didn't fare as well. Troy Geller's name made the rounds too, though not for the reasons he'd hoped. Veterans organizations issued statements. Sponsors pulled contracts. Customers canceled appointments. The backlash wasn't a wave. It was a reckoning. By noon the next day, the company issued a formal apology. It appeared across their website and social media in bold letters. "We deeply regret the disrespect shown to Sergeant Lucas Hayes. We are taking immediate action to ensure this never happens again." Troy Geller was suspended indefinitely. A replacement was named, training was promised, but the real change had already begun. Because it wasn't just about a garage anymore. It was about every place where silence had allowed cruelty to grow. Every moment a hero had been overlooked. Lucas didn't ask to be a symbol. But in standing tall beneath that salute, he reminded the country what dignity looked like when no one's asking for applause. And that reminder was spreading faster than any headline ever could. The invitation came in an envelope, hand-delivered by a guidance counselor from Roosevelt High, just 5 miles from the garage. It was simple. White cardstock, blue ink, no frills. "We'd be honored if Sergeant Lucas Hayes would speak during Veterans Appreciation Week." Lucas read it twice, then a third time. It felt foreign, not the words, the tone, honored, appreciated. For so long he had been just another face moving through a world that looked away. He said yes, though the thought of standing in front of hundreds made his palms sweat. Public speaking wasn't in his toolkit. He'd faced gunfire with less hesitation, but something in the counselor's eyes when she handed him the note, earnest, hopeful, made him feel like it mattered. The morning of the assembly, he stood in front of his mirror and brushed off the shoulders of his dress blues. The jacket hung looser now, his frame leaner with time, but the fabric still held weight. Chief watched from the doorway, ears twitching, as Lucas adjusted the buttons with slow, careful hands. He pulled his cap from the shelf, creased, worn, but dignified, and placed it gently under his arm. The school auditorium buzzed with the low hum of students who didn't yet know what they were about to witness. Phones flickered. Whispered jokes passed between rows. But the moment Lucas stepped onto the stage, something shifted. The students fell still. His prosthetic clicked softly as he crossed to the podium. He didn't speak right away. He just looked out at them. Rows of young faces, some curious, some skeptical, all waiting. "I didn't lose my leg," he said finally, voice steady but quiet. "I gave it so others could stand. No mention of battles, no glorified tales of war, just truth. Plain, heavy, unforgettable." He spoke about endurance, not heroism. About waking up when your body screams not to. About walking through life when you no longer fit inside the world you left to protect. He didn't ask for applause. But when he stepped back from the mic, they gave it anyway. Not a smattering, not polite claps, a standing ovation, thunderous, sustained. And this time, it wasn't for a uniform. It was for a man who had been made small by the world, and chose to stand tall anyway. It appeared on a Wednesday morning, unannounced but impossible to miss. Where once there had been a cracked slab of concrete outside the auto garage, now there stood a bench, dark bronze, polished until it caught the sun just right. No logos, no sponsorship plaques, just a single line etched into its backrest in crisp, unflinching letters. In honor of Sergeant Lucas Hayes, he walked alone so others wouldn't fall. No ribbon cutting, no speeches. The bench didn't need ceremony. Its presence alone carried enough weight. It faced the street just a few feet from where Lucas had walked that day. Head down, mocked, unnoticed. Now it faced the city, steady and unmovable, the way he had been. Veterans were the first to come. One by one, they showed up. Old men in worn jackets with faded patches. Younger ones with quiet eyes and service dogs at their sides. They didn't come for attention. They came to sit, to reflect, to remember. A few placed notes under the bench, folded slips of paper that said things like "thank you" and "I see you." Some just ran their fingers across the engraved letters, then walked away without a word. Students started showing up next. Some left flowers. Others just stood for a while, hands in their pockets, staring at the name as if trying to understand something that textbooks had never taught them. One girl, quiet, maybe 16, left behind a hand-drawn picture of Lucas in his dress blues, standing beside a boy with no leg but a smile that reached both ears. The city began to change in small ways. Mechanics from the garage stepped outside during breaks, not to smoke or joke, but to nod at passing veterans. A new sign was posted above the bay doors. "Veterans welcome here." The shop hosted a community event, not out of obligation, but out of something rarer. Remorse turned into respect. And across town, conversations shifted. People no longer asked only what happened that day. They started asking, what can we do better? Because sometimes it doesn't take a riot to shift a culture. Sometimes it just takes a bench, a name, and the memory of a man who never asked for applause, but stood tall so others could rise.